Hello, Pirate Dave here. It's another Friday, which means it's another Phantom Daily story. This time, Phantom Daily story number 5, Prisoner of the Himalayas. To quickly recap the previous story, Little Toma, as I mentioned last week, that's a little bit disconnected from the preceding story, War in the Jungle, and this following story, in that it doesn't reference the events of either during that story's length, right? Little Toma is a young Caucasian child that grew up amongst a Bangalla tribe. The Phantom discovers him, realizes his father is not actually his father, traces a bribery scheme all the way back to England, brings Little Toma there, and uncovers a plot to usurp Little Toma's lordship out from under him that he's entitled to, and sets everything right, installs Little Toma as the lord that he was meant to be, and that's where that story ends. This story actually opens up referencing a lot of the events from Little Toma and the Phantom's adventure in England. So it's perhaps insincere to say that Little Toma is totally disconnected from what's going on, but it didn't have any developments with Diana Palmer or anything like that, which is going to change very quickly at the start of Prisoner of the Himalayas. As you can see right on the first panel, we see Diana's progress. Diana is currently dating a revolving door of suitors. Everybody's asking her to marry them. She's turning them down because she's dreaming about the Phantom. She's still in love with him. She sent him a Dear John letter at the end of War in the Jungle, but that's only because she didn't want him to give up his legacy just for their love. We also meet a very important character in the next 90 years. This is Lily Palmer. This is Diana's mother. She's very well to do. She wants Diana to buckle down. She suggests to Diana that, what is she waiting for? She needs to find somebody to get married. Diana takes Lily's advice immediately. The next guy that asks her, a guy named Bob, she goes ahead and she just says yes. She says yes. But she does admit to Bob that she's in love with another man. She's in love with the Phantom. Interestingly, she reveals the Phantom's secrets to Bob, that he takes up the mantle of this 400-year-old legacy, based on a myth. I think this is more for the readers, for the readers' credit than it is for any sort of like internal lore consistency. I think Lee Falk's just cheating a little bit, but it's perfectly fine. The Phantom has seen the wedding announcement in the newspaper. It's actually taking place in Paris, if you'd see that. He's already on his way back to Bengala, tells him to turn the ship around. We're going back to Europe. We're going to France. We're going to find out where Diana is. We get this very short panel. It would have been a one-day panel, I think, or a one-day strip of a couple men discussing the Phantom's exploits in England, and they say he's the right man for the job. What job? We don't know. The Phantom is on his way back to the Palmer estate. He's sneaking into Diana's room. He finds her, and oh no, good night. It must be her grandmother. That is the Phantom's mom, actually. That's Diana's mom, Phantom, not the Phantom's mom. And then I didn't know Diana had a sister. What a guy, man. She's actually very impressed by the Phantom. She relays the story to Diana the very next day, but Diana accuses her of just having a nightmare. This is a completely an aside, but she says, "You did have some rare bit tonight, didn't you?" I'm a big fan of Winsor McKay and Little Nemo, but Winsor McKay had an early strip called Dream of a Rarebit Fiend, right? Rarebit is like Welsh rarebit. It's cheese on toast, basically. Melted cheese on toast. I guess it gives you crazy nightmares. Anyway, getting back into the story. Diana doesn't believe that the Phantom's actually shown back up. The Phantom poses as Bob on the phone, says, "Hey, meet me in the park, fiance." She's like, "Okay." Goes to meet Bob in the park. You! She actually sees Devil first. Like that's a little more charming than just just dropping in on her. They are really glad to see each other at first, right? But she lets him know like he can't give up his legacy, and she's not going to be the one to destroy a 400-year-old legacy. She's going to bury Bob. She doesn't seem very happy about that, is what I'm picking up personally. You can make your own judgments. She's like, "We got to get married right away. The ceremony is rushed, and they're getting ready to get married." But the Phantom's he's not going back to Bengala. He knows that Diana loves him. He's decided he's going to take her. He just straight up kidnaps Diana. It's really great. It's so great, in fact, that it makes the newspaper. And in the news, this is actually in the newspaper. It's not just for effect. The Scotland Yard gentleman that we saw earlier sees the Phantom in the newspaper, sees that he's snagged Diana Palmer, so they assume that he's going to go back to her apartment. Sure enough, Diana and the Phantom go back to her apartment, and that's where they are waiting for him. Don't ask me what the timeline on this possibly could have been. I guess it could have been her apartment in England, right? So she's leaving from France to get there, so that's why they got there first. Anyway, they're not there to arrest him for kidnapping a woman. Even though that's technically what he did. They're actually there because they're concerning a matter in Barogar. Barogar is a country bordering Bangalla, so it's very important to Bangalla's politics and all that. Anything that happens in Barogar might affect the Phantom's homeland and his people, so he's got to take it seriously. Apparently the Maharajah's indisposed. This Count Bart fellow isn't letting anybody see him. Anyway, this is very important stuff, so he lets Diana know, like, I've got to go. And she's like, I'll go with you. He's like, no, I couldn't. It's too dangerous. And, oh, man, he just kidnapped her from her wedding, and he already has to leave again. Meanwhile, in Barogar, we see exactly what's happening. The British diplomats trying to get in to see the Maharajah. Even this Princess Kareen is trying to get in to see the Maharajah, but Count Bart says he's too ill. And she wants to see the Raja, the prince, but he's gone on a hunting trip. This is incredibly suspicious, right? And the British colonial services are at a loss for what to do. Everybody's talking about how crazy it is that the Count Bart isn't letting anybody see him. And that's when the Phantom shows up. They let the Phantom know what the deal is. They confirm the situation. Maharajah hasn't been seen. The Phantom's like, well, you know what? I'll just go take care of it. I'm just going to go infiltrate that city and see what I can find. He gets in and he runs into Princess Kareen. Princess Kareen lets him know exactly what's going on as she sees it and says, hey, I know where the Maharajah's chambers are, but I can't get there by myself. The Phantom's like, I might be able to make it there. The two eventually make it to the Maharajah's chambers, but they discover that there's nobody there. And he was apparently too ill to be moved. So what the heck is going on here? Meanwhile, the chase is still on for the Phantom, the intruder in the castle. And the Phantom, this seems dastardly, right? But the Phantom leaves Princess Kareen for the guards. She's in no trouble. She's a princess, right? She's royalty. So they're gonna discover her and take her back to her room or whatever. Meanwhile, the Phantom makes this daring escape from capture. Count Bart has met back up with Princess Kareen, and he's already trying to tell her, nobody loves you. They don't love you. They don't think you're important. That's why you don't know where any of them are. We also are introduced to this character, Shiva. She seems to be very smitten with Count Bart, and she seems to have some knowledge of what's going on exactly with this situation. The Phantom notices this, and he decides to encounter her in a courtyard. Apparently, Shiva's in love with Count Bart. She doesn't really care what's going on in Barogar. She just wants to be with him. And the Phantom decides to let her know, like, well, he seems really distracted by all this running Barogar stuff. Imagine if he weren't doing that. He could be with you. And she's like, okay, well, you're looking for the Maharajah. Maybe I could lead you to him. And then he could run the country, and me and Count Bart could be together. And they decide that's a really great arrangement. She leads him down to these catacombs, and it's like the Maharaj is being held prisoner somewhere. Nope, he's dead. And the Phantom is trapped like a rat. Shiva was still working with Count Bart. She wouldn't give up his interests that easily. The Phantom is stuck in. Look at all these holes with guns pointing through. How is he going to get out of this situation? The Count Bart's like, hey, man, I'll let you know what's going on. You just have to trust me and throw down your guns. The Phantom says, how do I know I can trust you? Bart's like, you don't know, but you really don't have a choice. And the Phantom's like, yeah, no, Yeah, you're right. I just love that, man. Like, typically it'd be like, oh, he's gonna do something to get out of this, something creative or smart or clever. No, he just decides to be taken prisoner because it's just the circumstances that he's in. Count Bart goes monologuing on the Phantom, lets him know that he's been a fan of the Phantom. He knows his story, he knows his myth, but he's not going to let that stop him from taking over Barogar. He, in fact, did not kill the Maharajah. The Maharajah died of natural causes, but he's going to take advantage of the situation anyway. The Phantom's like, "There's no way that you're going to be able to run the country. You're still not a king." And Bart says, "Well, Princess Kareen is a princess, so all I have to do is marry her." And so he reveals that he's gonna marry Princess Kareen. That's his whole plan. Now that leads us back to Shiva. Now Shiva runs into the Phantom in prison, and she decides to goad the Phantom, like, you thought you were clever manipulating me. The Phantom's like, well, yeah, well, I guess you were clever, but you don't realize that Count Bart's not gonna marry you. He's gonna marry Kareen. That's the whole point of his plan. And so, you seem to be in love with him, but but you're not going to be able to be with him because he's going to marry royalty in order to take over Barogar. This completely sets off Shiva. She is not happy about this situation, but seemingly there's not much that can be done at this point. The Phantom is brought before a firing squad, and he's against a wall. Men are holding rifles. How's he going to get out of this one? Boom, boom, boom. He doesn't. Seemingly he doesn't. The Phantom can die. They box him up and they throw the box in the ocean, and the box sinks to the bottom. Oh, no, wait. The Phantom climbs out of it and he makes it out of it. He makes it back to the British diplomats and lets them know what's going on. It turns out that Shiva had actually bribed the guards to shoot over the Phantom's head. So it's not something that's like super clever. It's just the guards pretended like they shot the Phantom. It's something that could only really work in sequential art, or nothing that had a continuous visual element, because you would see that you'd see these these bullet holes bounce over the Phantom's head and all that, right? I feel like it's important to clarify that at this moment, that we get those sort of developments. Meanwhile, Count Bart decides he's going to check on Prince Gar, wherever he has Prince Gar held hostage, the Raja. The Phantoms knows that Bart's going to need his chauffeur to go wherever he's going to need to go, decides to pose as the chauffeur. He does a lot of disguising. This isn't the first time, right? And so the trick here is that the chauffeur doesn't even know where the prince is being held, so the Phantom can get away with this, right? Because Bart's going to tell the chauffeur where to go anyway. They meet up in the mountains with Gar. Meanwhile, Gar's trying to escape from his containment. He knocks this guy, and this guy just very politely takes him out immediately. So he's not going anywhere. Bart has decided to starve Gar. He starved him for a couple of days, so he's using that to make him more suggestive in order to sign over the country to Count Bart. That's his contingency plan, because now that the whole Shiva and the whole Princess Kareen scheme has gone belly up, and Shiva's betrayed him to save the Phantom, because ultimately, Shiva wants Bart. She doesn't want Bart to marry Kareen. She doesn't want Bart to run the country. She just wants Bart. The Phantom makes his way through the forces of Count Bart, protecting Prince Gar, and he makes off with Prince Gar into the winter. Prince Gar is still starved. He's been starved for days. And by the way, it's probably not long enough to make somebody like this starved. They say you can go a couple of weeks without food, right? But he is also a prince, so maybe we can maybe we can be a bit more understanding. The Phantom actually goes back to the estate, not just to get the prince some food, but he discovers that the prince actually did sign the papers. They signed the country over to Count Bart. So he uses the attempt to get back some food and to get back the papers, and he does, and he burns the papers for warmth, and they eat the food to so that they're no longer hungry. They make this daring escape down the hillside on a pair of skis, and they are out of danger. Prince Gar reunites with Princess Kareen. It's very good. Meanwhile, Count Bart doesn't exactly know the developments that has been going on. He makes his way back to Barogar, and when he gets there, he is arrested by the royal military, brought before Prince Gar Raja, now Maharajah. And what's going to happen? Of course, Count Bart is going to be executed. There's no other. There's no other solution, right? Right? Nope. Shiva pleads for his life because she loves Count Bart. And keep in mind that Leafolk does kind of like set the groundwork for this being a believable resolution, because Count Bart by this point hasn't killed anybody. He didn't kill the Maharaja. Um, he just took advantage of a situation that, and really dastardly did it, right? He just took advantage of the situation to take over the country, kidnapped the Prince Raja, made a plot to marry and presumably do, other terrible things to the Princess Kareen, and, whatever other plans he had for the country of Barogar, right? But but at least at least he didn't kill anybody. That's actually where the story ends. So Count Bart is exiled from the country to be with Shiva, and he gets kind of a happy ending, right? He doesn't get what he wants, but he's not killed. He's not imprisoned. He's exiled, and he has the horrible existence of being with a woman who loves him so dearly that she would throw her mercy on, throw herself on the mercy of the court in order to save him. Prisoner of the Himalayas, I think, was a reorientation for Lee Falk in that he realized fans were going to be mostly interested in, I think, this budding romance between the Phantom and Diana. And I guess it's not a budding romance, but the resolution of their situation, of how their romance can come to be. And the Phantom's existence, once again, is really dependent on that romantic relationship with somebody. Part of what we're going to uncover, perhaps not even as much as we should, is what makes Diana Palmer such a compelling object of the Phantom's interest. And that's probably a little bit minimizing the meaning to her as a character. She's not an object. We're going to learn a lot more about her, how talented she is, how wonderful she is, how patient she is with the situation that she is in. But Lee Falk, I think, finds out with Prisoner of Himalaya, finds that sort of groove between, okay, we're going to need some constant updates on what's going on with Diana Palmer because we've already invested this time with her as a character. We already know that this is where readers want the story to go. And yes, we're going to have those episodic pulp adventures where the Phantom goes off and it's not Phantom Diana centric, but we need to keep checking in, right? And keep in mind, this is 1938. I don't think I said it at the top. This is February 7th, 1938. This is 2 years after the strip started. This is still before even Superman had arrived on the scene. So we're still not seeing that modern format of comic storytelling where we, you know what I mean, right? This is still trailblazing in a lot of ways with what a superhero in a relationship can be. And of course, the Phantom will always be distinct because the relationship will always be part of his mission. It won't be a detriment, it will be part of the mission to justice. Hopefully, you enjoyed Prisoner of the Himalayas. I'll be back next week with daily story number 6. I think it's Adventure in Algiers. We might jump back to the paperbacks for that. I'm not sure. In any case, it'll be in here as well. So if we need to go back into the Hermes Press volume, we absolutely will do that. Thank you very much. Hopefully you enjoyed this full review of Prisoner of the Himalayas. I'll see you next time. Bye.